Amelia, and I'm a junior at a specialized high school for the arts, and welcome to my Spotlight Series podcast. The purpose of this series is to help my peers gain a better understanding of careers in the fine and performing arts. So we will be covering writing, acting, instrumental music, dance, musical theater, and the vocal arts. For today's podcast, we will focus on careers in creative writing, and I want to welcome our guests, Scott Williams, Kate Kristensen, and Caden Armstrong. And here's a little bit about each of our guests and their backgrounds. So after graduating from SUNY Cortland and many years of bartending while studying acting and writing in New York City and Los Angeles, Scott Williams landed his first writing assignment in 1995. Writing feature scripts for Ron Howard, Kevin Costner, and Ray Liotta ultimately led him to television when he was hired to write an episode of NYPD Blue, earning him a staff position on Brooklyn South. Since then, he's written and produced many top shows, including Third Watch, Crossing Jordan, Bones, and Castle. For the last 7 seasons, he served as an executive producer and writer on CBS top-rated NCIS. Aside from entertainment, Scott is the co-founder of Shane's Inspiration, an LA-based nonprofit organization dedicated to building programs that teach kids tolerance and inclusion. In her role as vice president of scripted content, Kate Kristensen develops and oversees scripted series across the NBCUniversal cable entertainment portfolio, which includes USA Network, SYFY, E, and Bravo. Based in the Los Angeles office, Kate first joined NBCUniversal in 2008, rising from an assistant to manager of unscripted programming at E Entertainment. In 2011, she went on to cover both scripted and unscripted programming and later became part of the cable entertainment scripted group, working across multiple networks. Since then, she's developed several notable series, including the first scripted series on E, The Royals and the Arrangement. She is also the point executive on USA's The Sinner, Bravo's Imposters, and Dirty John, and the recently announced E pilot Juicy Stories. She graduated from Boston University with a BA in Independent Study and Television and Film and Society. Caden Armstrong is a senior at Calabasas High School who has recently committed to the American University in Paris. When she's not studying or reading fantasy and historical fiction, she is working with publishers and New York Times bestselling authors on her Instagram and YouTube channels to promote new and upcoming books. Her Bookstagram, 1,000 Books to Read, has more than 24,000 followers, and her BookTube, 1,000 Books to Read, has over 12,000 subscribers. She's worked on promotions with publishers such as Penguin, HarperCollins, and Bloomsbury, and has had the pleasure to work with companies such as Warner Brothers, Disney, and the 20th Century Fox by promoting book-to-movie adaptations. Caden has also had the opportunity to interview New York Times bestselling authors Cassandra Clare, Leigh Bardugo, Cami Garcia, Danielle Page, Rick Riordan, and Romina Russell. So again, it's really nice to have you all here and making time to help me with this project. You're really going to help a bunch of students and fellow peers understand their interests and encourage them to pursue that interest, hopefully in college and, so on. But yeah, it's nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so for our first question, I just want to know a little bit about what you're currently working on and maybe describing your profession a little bit more than what I've covered so far. So why don't we start with Kate?
Sure. So as you said, I'm vice president at NBCU Cable, which covers USA, Sci-Fi, E, and Bravo. So my team is a little bit different than most teams around town because I both develop TV shows with writers and producers, and then once those shows get picked up to pilot and subsequently series, then I stay on them as what's called a current executive. So my responsibilities are, working with writers who bring in pitches and scripts and developing that material with them to hopefully get a pilot pickup. And then, once that, sort of train is on the tracks, just sort of the day-to-day executive, watching cuts, reading scripts, giving notes, making sure that, my producers and writers have what they need from us and the network, and that the network has what we need from them. So that can be from a marketing perspective, digital, press, there's hundreds of people at the network who need and want things from our shows and our writers, and I'm sort of the go-between to make sure it all happens. My day-to-day is different every day. It's pitches with writers, it's notes calls, it's watching cuts, reading scripts, it's schmoozing with agents and producers in the hopes that they'll bring us their great material and their great writers and directors. It's a lot of fun. Every day is very different.
So it seems like you're sort of a medium between, to get new content for these shows and like these different projects.
Mm-hmm.
So as sort of a medium who, gathers new content for shows and stuff, I was wondering what qualifies someone to critique or evaluate more scripted content for the purposes of development.
Got it. Well, in terms of like the way you sort of rise in what I do, it's really, you start from the bottom, right? So I started as an assistant, and it really is a very active process, reading scripts, analyzing them, watching cuts, giving notes. You have to keep doing it to get better at it. And every project's different, every writer's different. So it's really about maintaining that relationship and nurturing it. So what qualifies someone, I don't know that there's sort of boxes that you check, but it's the more you read, it's like writing, right? In general, the more you read, the more you work on how you give notes, what notes you give, what aren't worth giving. Those are the steps you need to take, but it's not something, you don't get a degree in note giving or being a development executive. So it's just something you have to practice. And I still learn every day from my bosses, from my peers, from the people I work with. It's a very specific job, but it's a lot of fun, at least to me.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, back to the first question. Why don't we move on to Scott?
Sure. Hi. Back to what am I doing currently?
Mm-hmm.
I am a writer and executive producer on NCIS. I get asked frequently, which do you prefer? For my friends that aren't in the business, they'll say, which do you prefer, the producing or the writing? And basically, if I couldn't write, I wouldn't be producing anything. I mean, I'm basically, my main function on the show is as a writer. As I've moved up the food chain over the years on multiple shows over my 20 years in television, the ranks of executive producer and co-AP certainly give me a little more clout in terms of, voicing my opinion and getting a vote in casting and in the direction that our seasons go, things like that. The actual producing, the line producing, that sort of thing goes to an actual line producer, Mark Horowitz, on our show. I'm brought in to help others with their scripts and to write my own scripts, about 3 to 4 scripts a season generally. And they give me a nice fancy producer title to make me feel special. And but at the heart of it all, I basically just write. That's my main function, and I'm not kidding myself either which way. I enjoy the writing. It's what I got into. It's why I got into television. It's what I got into television to do. And they decided, well, great, you'll be a producer too. And I said, okay. And they said, when's your next script coming out? So I just kept writing and said, oh, okay, I don't get to produce. At any rate, that's all. So it's simple. It's pretty basic.
Well, as someone who's written a lot of scripts already and who continues, to write a lot for shows and like having something for viewers to see weekly, it seems like you need a lot of, either relatable experiences or just some life experiences to be able to write that kind of content. Is there something maybe that you can share that has helped a lot to, keep writing and like pushing your creative process?
Yeah, you sent out a terrific batch of questions for us to ponder ahead of time. So I really appreciate that as well, because it got me thinking of something that David Milch, who created NYPD Blue, and he's a sort of legendary writer who wrote for Stephen Bochco for a number of years. And when he hired me, he said, "Listen, I like your writing just fine." I had written a feature script that never got made for Ray Liotta that David Milch got a hold of, and that's kind of what started my television career. He said, I like your writing, but I like the fact that you tended bar for 12 years even more. So basically from college to New York City and to Los Angeles from I'm going to date myself here, from 1980 or so through 1992. Not a math major, obviously. Those 12 years, I attended bar. So in New York, it was mostly pursuant of an acting career. Once I moved here, I started writing, and I would basically write all day and bartend all night. And that's how I kind of lived my life for a number of years. And David Milch felt that my life experience, based on that, I was seeing people at their best and at their worst. And I kind of developed an awful lot of characters. And frankly, my specialty, I don't, lean to this side, but having grown up in New York and living in New York, yeah, if you need me to write some New York drunks, man, I got that down. I give you that all day long. So, but yeah, life experience means everything. I often tell young writers, because I go back to my old college and I speak to young writers quite a bit. And I was one of very few English majors at my school. Writing, practicing writing is terrific, but, don't be afraid to take that day job. If you're making French fries at McDonald's, you may one day write the script about the guy that makes French fries at McDonald's who saves the world. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. Life experience, there's no replacement for it. It can't be picked up in other shows or in movies, often with young writers. And this isn't a slight at all, but like they're writing what they know. It's a cliche for a reason. You write what you know. But a lot of them know, they grew up on movies and television, kind of like I did. But without life experience, you're kind of just recycling those shows, which isn't necessarily always a bad thing. I mean, I could think of Stranger Things is like a great homage to lots of classic film and television from the 80s that I see. But generally, there is no replacement for life experience. So I'll often tell writing students, eagerly seek out things to write about, even from the most mundane experiences to the most exciting. Never stop taking notes in your head, at a moment of boredom. If you're sitting on a bus, take note of the people on the bus and check them out and create some characters in your head if you really want to continuing to experience life and find things to write about. That's sort of your question?
Really insightful for high schoolers today, because a lot of them feel like, if they do have a path that they want to set on, they just want to gather experiences that relate to that path instead of thinking more, outside the box or outside what they want to do to contribute to that. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
No, don't worry about getting, yes, a day job in the industry is fabulous, but if it's not in the industry, you're still just collecting experiences and things to write about.
So now finally, Caden.
Hi, Caden.
Hello. So I believe the first question was what we're working on now and a little bit more about ourselves.
Definitely. Yep.
Okay. So I do a lot. Mainly, like you said, I'm a book blogger. I got into the book world actually by seeing movies. My parents are both in the film business. My dad's an animation editor and my mom's an actress. So I was the kid with my dad who went to go see the nerd movie, and it was The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare, and I found out it was a book series and got pulled into the world of books, and then found social media because of it, and I was shocked that there was this thing called Bookstagram. I was like, what is that? I got pulled into that, and I've been doing it for almost 5 years now. And as of right now, I'm always working on new videos. I recently interviewed Rick Riordan, who wrote the Percy Jackson series, which was kind of like a dream for me. And I'm always going to new book conventions. Like this upcoming weekend is Y'all West, which is a huge book convention. And then also, which wasn't in my bio because it's kind of slightly new, is I got picked up by Sandra Dykstra Literary Agency, and I am now a writer at their agency. And my historical fantasy novel is currently being line edited to go out on submission to publishers within the next month or so. So that's fun. So I'm always currently redrafting. So that's what I'm currently working on. And then I have 4 other pitches that I pitched to my agent that I am currently outlining. And then I'm also currently outlining book 2 of my series that I'm getting ready to go out on submission.
It seems like, you're having your book edited and there's a lot of stuff being taken out, but there's a lot of ideas that you might want to stay there.
Okay, so yeah, you cut out, but I'm guessing it's the how do you work around working with someone else who's new in the process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So I would flat out say I'm a stubborn person. Like, I am very stubborn. So like once I get my head wrapped around something, it's a very new process. And like when you said like you aren't like in as far into the writing and stuff, like as experienced, like as far as other authors, like I'm not really experienced. The only thing I know is I know the genre that I'm writing for. I literally work in the genre that I'm writing for. I'm primarily work in young adult fiction. So I know the books that aren't being published. I know the books that I wish I could read right now. And that's really how I came at my story is I was like, hey, this would be cool. I should make this a book that I want to read. I never thought it would go anywhere. It literally started as a manuscript on my phone, and I just wrote it in notes. And then a mutual author friend of mine, who's my mentor actually, and she was like, oh, you should go to this thing called Writing Pad, which is in Los Angeles, and it's like a class, and they have multiple different screenwriting classes. They bring in authors to teach you, and it's more of like a critique group. So yeah, I mean, like that really told me I could be a writer. So I mean, like if you're coming from the aspect of like you have no experience, like most authors in the position of trying to get their book published don't have the experience other than reading and writing. But as far as like the editing process, I mean, it's hard. I think I did this is my first round. So I did have like 2 breakdowns because I didn't know how to handle it. I'm an emotional person. But like, I mean, you have to also come from the standpoint that you chose, like, specifically with your agent, like, you chose this agent. You chose this agent because they knew where you were coming from. They knew your voice in your book. They knew where you wanted to go. They understood that. So you have to come from this part that they only are there to help you and that they want to help you make this better. So and also you have to keep your mind open because this is definitely a process and a very, very long process where you're going to get tons of edits and those edits are going to be brutal. But I mean, you also have to look at it that it is your book. So if you're really feeling strongly about a specific scene and they want you to cut it, you cut it and put it into a separate doc, and then you really read over it without that scene in the book. And then you decide if you need the scene for yourself or if it really was better to cut it. You can also take a break and come back. That's what I did. Or if they just think it's word count, which was usually my problem, you just say, okay, well, let's see if we can condense in a little bit because I feel that this one part of the scene really, really needs to be said. So I think that's really how you deal around the edit side.
Yeah, but no, like definitely, you're so welcome, I guess, to be on this panel. I mean, you're adding like a fresh new perspective for students who like seem like they probably haven't like jumped the gun and done something productive yet. So it's totally helpful that you're here.
You're certainly helping me feel lazy. I know that.
I know, me too.
Oh
no! Wow.
Everyone's doing great things.
Taking nap after all that. That was great. No, it's really wonderful. That's sort of, you've got probably the first ingredient, which is you have to write clearly. You
yes.
need it. So that's, boy, if you've got that, that's half the battle.
Do you have like, I guess, a specialized creative writing process that, you've developed also over the years that maybe you can voice out?
Yeah, I guess over the years, what I've developed is there's some sort of a German term that someone said to me way back when that's like Sitzfleisch, which basically means sit your ass in the chair and just do it. It's really,
that's so true.
It's hard. It's most writers I know, professional writers that have been working for years, have a very love-hate relationship with it because it's bedeviling. That blank page is daunting. It's never not daunting. The tiny voice in my head never goes away that says, this is the script where you get found out. This is the one where they figure out you have no idea what you're doing. And I think that voice is necessary. That wolf is at the door to kind of be proven wrong every single time out. The only difference I would say the 20 years of television experience has given me is that I now can intellectually figure out that's flawed thinking or that's just my noise talking. It still feels very real because you don't know until you know. So you're at act 3 in your outline trying to figure out what your next move is, and you're kind of at a loss until you have figured out XYZ, you can't move on. And that's ongoingly daunting. And plus also you're at a constant, while you're in the actual writing process, you're at a constant state of questioning yourself and self-doubting. Are these the right words? Is that the right word? What if about that word? What if I take that in? What if she says that? What if she says that? And you're saying your dialogue. I'm strictly obviously talking in script format right now, but just figuring out you're having these conversations in your head between people that don't exist, and you're trying to make them make sense. So that is a little schizophrenic at times. And that never gets easier either. And I don't think it ever should. I think that's sort of part of the joy of it. A lot of writers, I know we love saying that, I hate writing, but I love having written. There's nothing quite like writing fade out on a script. Which is why actually Kate has the unenviable task of dealing with writers who get to write fade out and think that they're Shakespeare, and then she gets to say, you know what, I didn't get this, and this didn't make sense to me, and all that.
Yeah.
And that took me a little getting used to as well, because every writer, when they finish a script, they feel like God in a way. They feel like, wow, I just created this whole world, and I wrote fade in and fade out in the end, and it's a very powerful feeling. It's a good feeling. And then, but completely necessary to have someone come in and let you know whether or not they got it. And it's hugely joyful when they get what you were trying to express. But if something you were trying to express falls short, or in some way doesn't serve the whole, you want a note giver to give you the notes. I think I grew more of an appreciation for people like you, Kate, who, when I started giving notes to people, as I started moving up the food chain a little bit, when you're giving notes to someone that fights you on the notes, that can be, you really want to deal with. I try more now to just digest notes and not try to come up with a quick answer on the fly. Because, and I'm sure Kate will speak to this, there's nothing worse than a writer that's instantly defensive about their work and saying like, well, what I was doing was, what you didn't get was this. It was right there on the page and you missed it. But then also I don't work quickly enough to kind of go, oh, right. Sometimes I will. I'll be like, oh, great point. Yeah, I missed that completely. But other times I'll need to just step away and really take some time to think. You'll hear this from actors a lot of times with directors. Good directors will be able to communicate in such a way that an actor will be able to take the note and then figure out a way to put it in their performance. I'll do that a lot of times when I'm getting notes on a script, is take some time to step away and go, what exactly were they asking me? What emotionally was I not, what chord was I not reaching? Was I not hitting that I can get to? And then I'll usually call back the note giver and say, okay, what about this? I thought of that. How about this? Is that what we were talking about? Yes, no, whatever. But I don't know why I got off on note givers, Kate. Sorry. But the pain of our existence.
The note, you were talking, I think, about the note behind the note, which
exactly right.
Talk about a lot. Right.
You'll just sort of say like, this didn't work for me because of XYZ, and I'll be like, oh right, I let you. Yeah, the note behind the note. That's the perfect way of saying it. And it takes a while to hear those sometimes, and a lot of younger or beginning writers will not hear that note behind the note. They'll just hear you didn't do it good enough. You didn't write this well enough. And they'll get it, they'll get very reactive to that. So dealing with newer writers on my staffs in various shows, I kind of learned like, oh yeah, you don't have to kill the messenger. They really are just trying to help you make the script as good as it can be. And hopefully, hopefully they like enough of what you did do. And I think also note givers learn, and I shouldn't speak to you, Kate, but speak for you, Kate, but it's like, I think they also learn to recognize like my favorite note givers always sort of acknowledge that and get like, I like this, I like that, I like this, I like this, I didn't like this, or,
yeah. You always start with the positive. Yeah.
Oh my God. Cause you're right, Kate, you work with lots of people who sometimes just jump right into like, okay, no, this isn't working. This line didn't work at all. And I'm like, well, how did you feel about the other 8,000 lines?
No, it's an incredibly, every project is so different. And I find that, I'm cover 5 shows right now and a pilot, and then probably 20 things in development. So say I'm working with put in writing teams around 30 writers at any given time. And, there are relationships where I'm a little bit more motherly, it feels like, or a friend, or a little bit more direct. It really is such a personal process. I can't speak to writing it myself, but working so closely with writers, there is so much heart and soul that goes into every word, and it is so personal, and you have to recognize that emotional, sometimes physical investment that goes along with it. And I try to, every executive is different. There are producers, executives, there are network executives. A former boss of mine told me early on, you have to figure out what kind of executive you are. And I realized pretty quickly, like, I'm a writer's executive. I feel like my job is to protect them from the network, but that also means making sure that I'm not only defending them at all turns, but giving them the information so that choices they're making that the network wants to be different, I inform them about why, and help them along with what at times can be contentious, either notes or issues with production. But it is also, it's also a business, and I have to represent the network side of the business, but we're dealing with art. So it's very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I feel like my job is to support the writer. And when I have notes, sometimes they're big notes and they can be really tricky and, as I said, contentious, but it's about how you approach that conversation. As you said, Scott, acknowledging all the work and trying to unearth what it is that we're bumping up against. And yeah, everybody is different, but I'm lucky. I have really great showrunners and writers. I feel very lucky because everybody at the end of the day wants it to be great.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they do need different approaches, I would say.
Yeah.
I can imagine some need more hand holding than others, or
And some want it.
A softer touch.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes that I get a lot when I interview authors, because that's primarily what I do through my YouTube, is that and it's so true, is that writing is about like 10% actual, like sitting down and getting the words onto the page. But then the rest, like the other 90%, is editing. And it's getting it to where you want to be once you have the story and just the idea on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the most important part, I feel, is getting what you want and getting everything in your head that is floating around and like persisting onto the actual page. That's like the first part, because it's like if you don't have that, you can't do the rest. You can't get it to where you want to be if you don't actually sit down and put it onto the page.
Mm-hmm.
First drafts suck. Like, they are terrible. My first draft is about like 200 pages for a fantasy, like hardcore fantasy, historical fantasy, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. I was so proud of it. I look back now, my manuscript's 600 pages going into like final drafts for submission, and I still have like almost a year of edits next if someone like picks it up. One of my favorite things is just creating stories. So what I found is to actually, for first drafts, have it on my phone and my computer. Then I could write whenever, and I could get the first draft down before I got bored with the story. Because once I had the first draft down, I could play with it. And that was my favorite process. Also, handwriting helps with writer's block a lot. I have a notebook that I take with me everywhere. It's in my backpack. It's in my purse. Like, literally, I take it everywhere. And that's for specifically the book that I'm working on now. But I have like 10 different journals for future projects. And whenever I have an idea for that project, no matter, even if it's like a name or a quick outline or anything, it's just, I jot it down. Even if it's like half a scene, it gets jot down in there. And the notebook's a mess, but it's like every page is a different half scene, or one page is the full outline of the book or whatever, but it's all in one place. And it's so that I don't forget it. So, yeah.
That's a good discipline. Wow.
Oh my gosh. There's like such like different processes like for everyone. But
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's great that you all have like a team though. Cause I can clearly tell like it's also about like sharing power and also sharing like responsibilities. And it's really like hand holding like with others to help you through this whole like writing or like editing or overseeing. But yeah, I mean like along with like, a good team, I also feel like a good, well, not just like family, but like having you to actively like think about your profession is really helpful. But so I was just wondering, for all of you, if maybe you had any issues or, like like a lot of support from the people around you, maybe your friends, your family, mentors?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely speak to that. I mean, like, I'm in the position of going into college, and I know a lot of seniors have the pressure to start going into college and majoring in what their parents expect them to major in. I know a lot of I have friends who are like that. I'm extremely lucky in the fact that I grew up in a house that is full of art. I grew up with books around me. Every Saturday night, we watched a new classic film, Hitchcock, like watched all the Hitchcock films, Casablanca, like everything, Marvel, everything. So, I mean, like, it was kind of expected that I would go into that, but also, I mean, I've always had the support system that I needed. I'm an only child, and even if I weren't an only child, I would have had it, thankfully, due to my parents. But yeah, I'm lucky in that. But like I said, I have a lot of friends who are going into college and are not necessarily majoring what they want to major in, or are staying in state when they want to go out state because their parents won't pay for a college in like outside of the state. So, I mean, you really just have to look at it like, this is what you want to do. And if it's your passion and your dream, then you can't give up on that.
Yeah, I would say I have like twofold support system. One is very obvious, which is my team at work. The way that we work, for every show on the air or every project in development, I have a junior executive who works alongside me, which is helpful for an incredible number of reasons, and including we'll read a script together, we'll watch a cut. We don't actually read it sitting side by side, but we both read our outlines, our scripts, and then we'll meet to talk about what we thought. And it's a great sort of backstop for Scott, what you said earlier, that if, you know, maybe I missed something, or I had a logic question or something, an arc didn't track for me, and my, you know, colleague will point out how it did work, and vice versa. It's a great way. It's a great collaboration. And then on the other side, I have the personal support. I'm very lucky. I have a very understanding husband who knows that every morning I'm going to wake up and grab my phone and read an outline quickly. And a lot of my Sundays are spent reading or watching cuts, and I'm available to producers when they, you know, have a question or need something on the weekend. So it's, what we do takes up so much time outside of a 40-hour work week that you need to have people around you who understand that and understand how much it means to you. So that's the support I rely on.
Parenthetically, that before I get to my support system, but I always forget that too, that you guys are handling multiple shows. I mean, I only have to worry about one show. You know what I mean? I only have to watch cuts of my show, and that you guys have to kind of shift gears, because I know even for myself, I'm reading outlines for my show from other writers, just to block out the noise, put down the social media, whatever else, and be able to sit down and actually really go through an outline. On multiple shows, I can't even imagine how you do it, frankly, but kudos that you get it done.
Thanks.
No, but I think that's also, and I appreciate too that you have a team that, yes, if you did miss something, someone else is there, because I know I sure as hell would miss a lot if I had to read everybody's outlines for different shows. That's for sure. As for my support system, yes, without a writing staff, I got into this. I went to college as a phys ed major. I was going to coach football and lacrosse. That was my thing. And I promptly flunked out of college after the first semester because they made me take a whole bunch of science that I had no idea about. But I managed to pull an A in freshman English, which our dean then said, hey, why don't you just be an English major? And so I went ahead and did that, just any excuse to stay in college and have fun. But even then, as an English major, my main skill set and how I got through college was being able to bullshit my way through a term paper. I was a terrible test taker. I kind of sort of read most of the books. But honestly, I wish I had taken better advantage of college while I was there. But I also had in the back of my head that when I got out of college, what I was going to go do is go to New York and try to be an actor. I hadn't been an actor. I done a little bit of acting in high school, no acting at all in college. When I told friends I was going to go and do this, I may as well have said astronaut. They had no connection to it whatsoever. But that time spent in New York City bartending and going to acting school and doing lots of plays and eventually doing commercials and some soaps and some theater and all that stuff was I really, unwittingly, I was building this sort of background, this knowledge of theater, of dramaturgy. And it served me well when I eventually got out here to Los Angeles and started a little theater company with some other expatriate New York friends. And I started writing plays for that theater company, and I was suddenly like, oh, wait a minute, I forgot I knew how to do this. Then once that play got up, I was like completely hooked, and sort of acting went by the wayside. I took every screenwriting course I could get my hands on, and over the years, I managed to finally get an agent from behind the bar, frankly. It's good to have good, powerful customers. But I managed to get an agent out from behind the bar. I got myself finally not working behind the bar after 12 years. And so my wife, my then girlfriend, now wife, was extremely supportive of that in terms of just like, you know what, you focus on the writing. Just take, like, she saw that sort of like the acting career was kind of iffy. It's brutal gig being an actor in this town, any town. But at any rate, yeah, so my wife really is the one that kind of, you know, living with a writer can be a little, you know, a little tough, because we kind of get down on ourselves when things dry up, or if we've written ourselves into, you know, we've painted ourselves into a corner, we got to get ourselves out. So we can be a tad moody. She sometimes in television knows what act I'm in depending on my mood. She says, like, you sound like you're in act 3 because it's, and then by the end of it, you know, I'm like strutting around the house, and she goes, you finished, didn't you? You feel good now. So I worked through whatever problem I had. So that's super important. In television, again, the support system is, as Kate was saying with her team, it's like to have other writers backing you up that I can go knock on their door and go, hey, it sounds an awful lot like what Caden does is somewhat solitary. Am I wrong, Caden?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I was gonna add on later, like outside of television, like fiction writing and like novel writing is a lot more solitary because it's really only you, and then you sometimes have an agent and an editor to talk to.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, one of the things that helps me is like I have my social media following, which might not seem like a support system most of the time, like especially like people talk about how social media is so hateful and like hate comments and all that kind of stuff, but out of the 24,000 people that follow me, I have about 20 of those 1,000 already excited for the novel that I'm writing. And so when I post that I'm writing, I get messages back and back like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see what you're writing, or oh my gosh, I love your videos, you inspire me so much. Like you get like that's a support system. And it's a support system that's kind of non-conventional. But like the time too, like the mood swings, my family knows, like when I'm writing and I have my earphones in, you do not talk to me. Like, or like when I wake up in the morning, I have to check social media and I have to post because I'm a blogger and like that's what I do. And they know that it's not just me wasting time and not wanting to talk to them like other teenagers might. You as a writer are the characters and the characters are you. So you're going to go through mood swings. You're also going to go through, like Scott said, where you're like, oh, crap, is this actually good? Or crap, I don't have a plot and I have deadline in 2 weeks. I need to create this. And so you kind of go stir crazy. But I mean, like, the support system is really important. But it can come from so many different areas. It doesn't just have to come from your parents or your family or your friends.
Well, it sounds like your social media following definitely holds you accountable and gives you a deadline.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Someone asked me, how long does it take you to write a script? I'm like, how long do I have? You know?
Yeah. I mean, like,
giving 2 months, I'm going to take all 2 months. I have friends that call themselves writers and they haven't finished a feature in 4 years. You know,
yeah.
It's like no one's holding them accountable. If no one's waiting to see it, if Kate's not waiting to see my draft on this date, you know, I might just, you know, not.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's like, I have a lot of author friends who are already published. And one of my friends is a New York Times bestselling author. And she says the social media, once you're already published, is half a like angel giving you heavenly light and half of like the devil trying to push you into hell. She says that you have to look at it with a filter on, because if you look at it as like, where's your next book, like pressure, you're never going to be able to actually sit down and write the book. Because if you feel like you have all these pressures and all these notes of like, I don't want this character to die, oh, you need to make this person a couple, or oh my gosh, you don't have enough of this, I want more of this, like you have to tune them out. You have to just kind of put a filter on what you can see. Because if you do that, then the support system will be there instead of being something that's holding you back and pushing you down.
Very good. I have to, as an aside to that, when I was writing on Bones, my first year there,
Fangirling. I'm sorry.
we were in a building on the Fox lot that maybe Kate knows that was actually a schoolhouse they built for Shirley Temple. So it's like this great little old house that has a clock on the top. Anyway, I go into this office, and Hart Hansen, the head of Bones, just says, "Hey, you got the good office. This used to be F. Scott Fitzgerald's." That's how old this building is. It's Gerald, maybe some of that good mojo will rub off on me. Well, I did some research, and the years that he was there are basically the years that he drank himself to death.
Oh, no.
Crippling self-doubt. And yeah, he was like one of those guys that, like, you know, brilliant writer, wrote some books, came out to write movies, and the business got to him, or the pressure of having to create movies got to him. You know, if you watch Barton Fink, which is obviously a farcical kind of movie by the Coen brothers, but you know, that's about that time period. And there's, I forget, John Mahoney plays an actor, a writer of that time period who's essentially drinking himself to death. But anyway, so you're going through all that stuff as you're writing it now, because every writer, the tortured artist is a real thing. We're all a little nuts. So,
yeah.
And Kate has to deal with us. So
I love it.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, the pressures of like deadlines and writing in general will like stress people out to the point of insanity. And I mean, like, I give a lot of credit to you guys for, you know, sticking through it all and stuff, and like having, you know, depending on others to like pull you out of that. But yeah, it's really neat.
your friend, they really are.
Yeah. And, you know, going back to Scott, so you know, in the beginning of college, you weren't like really thinking, you weren't having that like writing mindset. And I know, like, in general, like, a lot of people already find the arts, like, a risky thing to pursue, like, already. Like, so they, like, tend to go into, like, science or math and stuff like that. So I was just wondering, you know, when you're making something to acting to writing, like, how did you feel in the process? Like, internally, like, were you terrified? Like, what kind of, you know, thoughts were you having with yourself?
You cut out a little bit, but I'll take a stab at it anyway. I think the current generation in the last few, you know, in the last like 20 years, I mean, you know, in my day, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, back as a kid, you know, like I said, saying you were going to be an actor, well, you may as well said astronaut. I think it's a much more realistic thing now, thanks to things like YouTube and social media. I think people are much more used to being on screen than they certainly were when I was Caden's age. So yeah, I mean, you know, I had grandiose ideas, and I think in the back of my head, I always remember as a kid, I always got credit from teachers for having, you know, a great imagination, keep that alive. You know, everyone signed my yearbook, keep your imagination alive and kicking. I'm like, I'm a football player. What are you talking about? But they saw something in me that obviously I was a really good liar. I don't know, but they saw something in me that then I later on realized, oh, I had a skill back then that I didn't value enough, but I had this very grandiose idea of like, wow, my life's super interesting. This will make a great movie someday. I remember consciously thinking that when I was like 15, never thinking that I would actually go and do it, even though I was a fan of movies and things like that. Also, I was a very big daydreamer as a kid. And I remember, you know, my joke now is, you know, I used to get slapped in the head for daydreaming. Now I get paid for it. But because I used to stare off into space, and would drive my father crazy. So yes, going to decide to be an actor, I think this is what you're asking, was scary. Going into writing was sort of an act of, I think this, you know, desperation and inspiration are often closely related. And I think there was a level of desperation, especially in this particular case. I had a theater company where the actors that I had all pulled in to do this basic scene showcase, trying to get seen by agents and casting directors. I had a bunch of actors say, you know, we don't like the scene we chose, we don't like each other. And I was, you know, the ego in me said, hold on, I'm going to pull out my old typewriter, I'm going to write you like an SNL sort of sketch, and we'll see if this works. Well, 2 pages in, I always describe it as the applause came from within. So it was a very easy transition for me to go, oh, I like this just as much, if not more. I get to call the shots, and when I get to tell everybody what to say. And so it was a very empowering thing. So it made leaving acting easy. I have lots of friends who had to leave acting because they had families to support. They got into real estate, things like that, and it still sort of eats at them and kills them what might have been. I don't have a moment of that as an actor. I think I sit in and I audition other actors, getting to sit on the other side of it. I get to kind of watch them and feel for them in such a way that I realize, like, yeah, some work went into this and they really need this gig, and I wish I could give everybody the job. I don't know how I got into casting, but you asked, I think, just about the bravery. Is that what you were kind of asking about, going into being a writer? It certainly takes guts. It certainly takes a level of not, of you're never afraid of you're never not afraid of failure, but if you let that sort of drive you, once you've survived a few failures, of which I've survived many, and most writers do. Most writers, you're gonna, I got stuff I won't show anybody, and then I got stuff that I'm super proud of. You got to kind of make peace with your embarrassment level if you're going to be any kind of writer, because only the best writers write from their hearts. They don't write from their heads. They write from their hearts. So that's what Caden was describing earlier. It's like, I'm writing an emotional scene, I know it's pretty good when I cry, while I'm writing it. So, and because someone said to me way back when, if you're crying, they'll cry when they're reading it. And it's sort of, there've been a few instances where it's been my own dementia, but that's made it happen. But if you're not writing from your heart, you're not worth a damn. So, and I think that's also maybe what makes Kate's job hard too, because she deals with people that, are fragile, in a fragile state when they're getting notes sometimes, because they just feel so strongly about something. Anyway, that's I'm off on a tangent here, but every act of creativity, everyone, what Kate does, what Caden does, everybody that sits down to critique or try to create and improve and work a piece of material and make it better has to step out on a ledge to a degree and risk being wrong.
And to my understanding, Kate, you see the whole other side of it, as well as the writing part of it. So I was just wondering, since we've talked about the creative process of writing, as someone who oversees a lot of scripts, are there huge differences or maybe similarities that you can add on to?
You mean between scripts and writers and shows? I mean, look, I think every good show comes down to character, right? So we're all, whether it's a procedural, whether it's Game of Thrones, what you're really looking for, or what are, the arcs of our characters, what are the journey that we're going on with them, and why does this story have to be told in this way? And I think whether, it's an ensemble or a single lead show, you're looking at every character all the time to make sure that the story is authentic. Even if it's on a spaceship, you want there to be real emotionality, real stakes, and real authentic connections and emotions between your characters as well, that they really come to life and feel like the best. The shows that we have where the fans are the most passionate and most engaged are when they're not talking about, oh, the great set. I mean, that's like the candy, right? Or the costumes. That's all icing on the cake. But when they're super emotionally invested, it's because they feel like these characters are their best friends, and people that are real to them, that have come to life in a really meaningful way. So at least for me, that's where I really start when I'm, analyzing a show to even buy is, have I seen this character before? Or if I've seen it, what's the top spin on this character? What's the story that has to be told and isn't being told right now? So that's sort of how I would summarize the link that ties everything together.
There's so many different opinions, and it's kind of like writing, where it's you will always be kind of it's kind of like you will always be the villain of someone else's story. That quote is everywhere, and that's kind of what your job is to be as a reviewer. I don't want to say it's your job, but I mean, you're going to like a book that someone else hates, and you're going to hate a book that someone else loves. So you just have to put your opinion out there. But character is one of the most important things. I can hate a book's plot whatsoever and still enjoy the book because the characters were ridiculously strong and relatable and just completely 3D. They were malleable. Like you could just reach in and touch them. And then there's books that have incredible plots, but no character. And I can barely make it through 5 pages.
Yeah, we always, I'll always say that on all these procedural dramas that I've written on, we spend weeks sometimes kind of figuring out some ripping yarn, some twist that no one sees coming, and, you know, some hiding the ball and who the bad guy is by the end of the show. And then ultimately, you know, the show will air, and then you'll talk to someone who saw it, and they'll ask you nothing about the mystery. They'll just go, "Are those two going to hook up? What's going on?" That's all they really care about is the characters. So I always say, like, you know, the plot is what happens. And again, when I'm working with young writers, a lot of times I'll be like, "Look, plot's what happens. Story is really what happens between the characters. It's the cement between the bricks, you know, that holds the whole thing together." So that's the part that's really fun. We'll have scenes about, yes, the murder that took place in XYZ and the evidence that was collected, but the really fun, juicy stuff to write is, how did your day go last night? You know, all that stuff is that's what really fuels us, and that's the fun part. People think you're writing a crime show, but, you know, I'm just writing a really good cop show with jokes, you know, with some art and all that stuff. So that's sort of the trick we get to play on everybody. But you still got to come up with that 2 weeks worth of stupid mystery.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm coming from both perspectives, like wannabe writer and writer who's also a reader. And as a reader, you come from the perspective of character, and then from a writer, you have to kind of come from the perspective of both. And it definitely helps to be a reader, because you do see, like, the relationships that you like to read, and what draws you in from a character right away. And if you have that experience with reading, it really does help you write, because it will be smoother and more like you can just write without stopping to think about how it would go.
Wow, it's like a lot of information that is like totally going to help people. I feel like that is going to excite like writers, potential writers, to like really want to write and see that sort of product. But like coming alongside that, since like, you know, most of them like are probably like planning to go to college first, I was wondering, like, you know, with like different backgrounds in college, you know, like one person going into college, one person going through college in like different paths, like, do you have any advice per se, you know, about the college admission process?
It's really tough, because what you're doing is it's kind of like being a writer. You're putting your heart onto a page and then sending it to someone to be judged. I wanted to go to a college that allowed me to write. I wanted to have a creative writing, because I'm majoring in creative writing and art history. So I wanted to go into a program that would still allow me to work if it all works out before I go to college. So I would say, as far as advice for the college admissions process, just go with the flow, because even if you don't, like, that sounds really simple, but if you don't get into the college that you want, you have to really look at it as this is kind of fate. Like, it wasn't meant to be. And if they don't want you, they don't deserve to have you. Kind of. You have to kind of have that mindset, or it's going to be really, really hard to get through it. And then also, you can't give up on the place that you want to go to. I wanted to go to the American University of Paris. It was way too expensive. I gave up on it, and then I was looking at other colleges, and they gave me a huge scholarship, and now I'm able to go. So it's like, you can't just close off your mind until May 1st. And then as far as like working during college, I mean, again, college experiences is specifically your college experience.
You know, part of my job is dealing with our interns. We have like upwards of 4 interns every semester. So we do spring, summer, fall, and Caden, I hear in what you're saying a lot of what they talk about, which is the enormous pressure that they feel under to figure out immediately, you know, they're going to graduate, what job are they going to get, where are they going to apply. And I think probably the same thing sort of relates to applying to college in general. I feel like your generation has an incredible amount of pressure on your shoulders to succeed, and just with a lot of choice. You know, people talk about like sort of the paralysis of choice sometimes. And I feel like, you know, what I tell a lot of them when they're saying, oh, where should I apply for work? What should I do next? Is just relax, you're 19 or 20, like you have all the time in the world. And you learn just as much from mistakes or what turns out to be the wrong choice as you do from the right choice. Both are very meaningful experiences. And I think, Claudia, when you and I were talking before this began about you want to go in communications, but you're not exactly sure what that means yet, that's fine. I think that's actually great, because then you're not closing off your mind to everything else and pursuing X. Because I find when people have that sort of tunnel vision, you might be missing out on something that is even more satisfying to you than this thing that you're sort of blindly pursuing. And Caden, I think it's so great that you have parents that are so supportive, because people are complicated. We like different things. We like many things at many times. And so I would just say to people, like, just go and explore. That's what I did. I went to college. First semester, I majored in communications. And then I said, well, I want to take Zen Buddhism. And my dean said, well, you can't, because you need to take lighting. And that was crazy to me. So yeah. I swapped schools at my university and did an independent study where I got to take Zen Buddhism and a million different classes. And that just sort of helped refine what I love and why. So I think I just wish everybody would take a deep breath and let themselves explore, because you don't get to do that once you're in your career and, sort of in the grind as much. So do it now. It's exciting.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because you're so committed to this, and I have no doubts that you'll achieve every goal.
Thank you.
But at the same token, it's sort of like, hey, I'm going through this right now with my daughter. She just selected a school. She's 18. She's leaving in the fall, and it's a little tough on the parents. Not nearly as tough as it is on the kids. I know, because there is that pressure, and I hear it. People asking, "What's she going to major in?" And I'm like, who gives a damn? It's like it's just go. She's chosen a major, but I think I've made it clear to her of like, I expect you to change your mind. I hope you change your mind. I think you don't know what you don't know. And I think college, there's this sort of pushback from certain political sides saying that college is a big old waste of money. And I just couldn't disagree more. I think if you've gotten out of college and if the only thing you've gotten out of college is a diploma, then you just did it wrong. I think you go to college and you make it what everything you can possibly make it. Similar to what I said earlier about, characters being the cement between the bricks. I think, the bricks in this case are classes and, getting through your curriculum to earn whatever degree you happen to choose, whether it's Zen Buddhism or anything else. But I really think that the cement between that is the learning how to live life, learning how to collaborate, to work with others, to coexist with others, to travel, to do all these different things. It's such an exciting and wonderful time of life that I wouldn't have traded for anything. I am still, I count among my best friends, it's probably like, 5 to 10 people that I went to college with. And that's, going on almost 40 years ago. So you don't always may not always build up those relationships with people you go to school with, but I guarantee you gain experiences that you haven't even imagined for yourself yet. So I get, like I say, I get crazy. There was a photo on one of these Facebook or Twitter or something. Some guy like, college is a big waste of money, prove otherwise, and I'm like, oh, shut up, dude. Like maybe you just did college wrong and you got out of it. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, you come out with a mountain of debt. I think that's pretty screwed up, and I think we need to work on that. But, if you have the means and you get yourself if you've gotten any kind of financial aid, go for it. And yeah. Like I said, if I could have done it all over again, here's how old I am. My college loan was $10,000. $10,000 covered me for all 4 years of my little state school in upstate New York.
That hurts my heart.
Right. But I worked, I made money, I attended the bar, and I went to class, and I did the college radio station, and I had a great time. And, I got opportunities. I didn't go abroad because I would have, it would have meant missing a Friday night at college. What the hell? But the school my daughter is going to has a mandatory semester abroad, and I'm thrilled about that because I'm just, she knows how to travel, and I'm thrilled that she's going to go get some experience there. it's the best, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And I get crazy when people talk about like, no, get right into the workforce. I'm just like, oh man, the workforce will be waiting for you when you're out of school. Like, go take your time and change your mind and don't be afraid. Yeah, the Zen Buddhism thing, that was like music to my ears, because it's you're going to get people to say, no, you have to take these courses in order to get through this. Likening it again to the story thing I was saying before, characters, man, I'm not even sure if I'm going to go in this direction. Maybe I'll just leave it here. But, characters are what people care about. You do need that engine of a plot to move your story along. You need the engine of a college structure to move along. Achieve a goal in 4 years, which I think is also a very valuable thing that college gives you. It teaches you how to set a goal and achieve it. You don't sound like you have any trouble in that regard, Caden, but a lot of kids, I certainly did coming out of high school, I had no idea how to I knew how to try out for a team and make it and play. I didn't know how to I have this goal and I'm going to have to work hard to attain it. And I think college, teaches you how to think and how to do that, and how to, if it's a solitary pursuit, it teaches you how to trust your own voice. And if it's a team pursuit, you get to work with others and collaborate and all that. So I just don't think you're going to get that at any job you would get right out of high school. I think that's insane. So bravo for college.
No, I totally agree. And I also one more piece of advice is I've seen a lot of people fall for the root of the college name. And I do think, unfortunately, I think this is a bad side of it, is that college names and prestige really do have a lot to do in certain businesses. And I think if you do fall into those certain businesses, then it does mean a lot. But if you're not sure what you want to do, which is completely okay, then, you really do need to not focus on the name of the college and really focus on who are the people going to this college? Is it a college that you can really see yourself at? One of mine was I want to travel. I really in my education, I wanted a world traveling education. And I found AUP, which is American University Paris, and I fell in love with it. And every time I went to another college that kind of had bigger names and were more prestigious and would be technically quote unquote better for me as a writer to come out of, the one thing holding me back was they were holding me back when I wanted to travel. And so, you really have to not let the name of the college hold you back, because you want to end up at a place that will be good for you as an individual and won't be good for you on technically the, because I really agree that going into college, you don't necessarily know what you're going to be doing once you get out of college.
Yeah, they might ask what school you went to, but only just because they might know someone else who went there.
Yeah.
No one's ever asked to see my degree. No one's ever asked to see proof that I made it all the way through. I love being in a writer's room full of Harvard grads, and I say, I went to the State University of Cortland, and they're like, where the hell is that? It's upstate New York. But I love saying that because I came from there, and I'm very proud of that kind of blue collar route. And just as proud as anybody who is that went to Harvard. Good for them. But if you had a writer's room, or if you had made up strictly of USC film grads, I think you'd have a pretty dull show. So.
Yep. That's you guys kept on answering my follow-up questions. But yeah, that was really great. I think that was a lot of help for me as a student myself, and I'm not even sure if I want to go into writing. But yeah, thank you guys for your time and energy, being here and answering my questions. I'm so glad I'm having us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
Nice to meet you guys.
Bye. Have a nice rest of your week. Bye.
Hey, nice when you give me notes next time, okay?
Okay. See y'all.
Bye.